What is up, Shark Nation? Welcome to another episode of the SharkPod. As usual, we're coming to you live from Greystone Studios. Mark Baker out there in Glenageary. How are you doing, Mark?
Good, Luke. How are you?
I'm good. We've got Garret Flower on the line here, CEO of both ParkOffice and Parkpnp. How are you doing, Garret?
Hey, guys. Delighted to be on.
Delighted to have you here. Sorry for the mix-up earlier on. We've been sending emails to the wrong email address and stuff like that beforehand, so we're delighted that everything is sorted out here. So just to give a little bit of background to our listeners here, Garret was the founder of Krüst originally, which is a bakery in Dublin City, also kind of bakery cafe, and also he was independent, or was it the Irish Independence 30 under 30 twice, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Garret?
Yeah, twice, thankfully.
Nice. Okay, so returning champion there. And now you're running two companies, ParkOffice and Parkpnp, which are platforms for managing parking spaces, so people can get the most out of them. So looking forward to digging into that as well. But Garret, when you first started out after college, I guess, what kind of got you into the baking scene, or is it something that was just a passion of yours? Because I saw from your LinkedIn that you were in Dublin Business School and you were doing like business marketing and stuff like that. Accounting and finance. So accounting and finance doesn't really scream baked goods to people. What got you into that?
Yeah, so I suppose like many people, I just had an itch from an early age to start new things, and I was very creative early on. So I would sell things in school, and like pot noodles. You know, I would sell anything from sweets to pot noodles in school, and make a few pound off that. And in college, I've started doing a bit of what you'd call nightclub promotion / pre-drinking in my apartment, which turned into a business. I was then one of the first 100 listers on Airbnb.
Really?
Subletted, yeah, out of my subletted house in Dublin city centre, and so I've always been pretty creative and resourceful. And I suppose leaving college, I was trying to create a new business opportunity, and I started to look into new ideas. And I was fortunate enough that I had met another guy who you might know, Devan Hughes from Buy Me.
Shout out to Devan, SharkPod Alum.
Yeah, shout out to Devan, getting a lot of press these days. Fair play.
A lot of press. He's all over the place. We were just talking about that before.
Yeah, exactly. And so myself and Devan met at towards the end of college and started running these night events and making money from that. And we were just fairly keen to start a new business post college together. So put our heads together, and we realized that. So my dad is a farmer in Longford and had 80 acres of land. We were trying to figure out ways we could use that. And we came up with a brilliant idea of setting up a solar farm, a renewable energy solar farm. And
from nightclubs to solar energy, I like the thinking path.
Yeah. Well, the world is your oyster, you know. So we started brainstorming and researching. We even did a sustainability report and tried to get the SEAI involved, and it actually attracted a consultant, one of the world's foremost experts in renewable energy, a guy called Diego Belmonte. And we sent it to him, and he said, "This is a fantastic project, guys." And he was so impressed by the project, he brought us out to LA, and we went with him to view LED factories in New Mexico. And then in LA, we were pitching, we were part of his pitch to the third largest real estate company in America called SunCal. And we were pitching renewable energy for all of their real estate projects. And, you know, he brought us over to talk about the benefits of PV solar cells. And it was just brilliant. It was a brilliant experience for two 21-year-olds. and we got involved in a pre-IPO at 21 and raising money to try and make that happen. But that's a different story for another day. Devan and myself parted ways then when we came back to Ireland. We tried to set up one or two other things, LED selling, but the market was just, as you know, pretty depressed back then at the early stages of the last recession. And people were very unwilling to spend on anything, let alone LED lighting, which saves 80% of the cost, you know. So Devan went on to work at a couple of different companies, and I worked for DBS, which is the college I went to and studied accountancy and finance. And while I was there, I tried to set up an entrepreneur society, you know, to get people around the table talking about new ideas. And people forget that, you know, entrepreneurship is relatively new in terms of this whole trend. You know, back when I was starting out with Devan, like, no colleges had an entrepreneurship course. You know, there was none of this innovation ecosystem conversation going on. And when I sent out an email for an entrepreneur society, I got one email back, and it was from a guy called Rob Kramer. And Rob is a big Austrian guy who's a bodybuilder. So very unusual that he showed up to my house that evening to talk entrepreneurship with a big basket of pastries and
strudel and all that. I'd imagine that type of thing.
Yeah, like Arnold Schwarzenegger with pastries. Just picture it, like, you know. And he showed up, and these pastries had like the most amazing taste. So they were like strawberry and yogurt pastry, dark chocolate and raisin, coconut. Like, none of this had been in the Irish market before. And I just tasted them and said, wow, you know, these are the most amazing pastries I've ever had. Like, why don't we sell these into coffee shops around Dublin at the weekend? So for the next 3 weekends, you know, me and him baked in my apartment and burnt half of it and started selling into cafes around Dublin. And within 4 weeks, we had 30 coffee shops buying. And we were literally, it was mental. Like, we were baking, putting the pastries in baskets. I would then walk with the baskets and try and sell them door to door into coffee shops. And like, it's interesting how the business scaled. We initially got a contract baker in Cork to start making it on a larger scale, and then we quickly started to realize that supermarkets would be a bigger opportunity. So we went to Super Values Direct, and we had phenomenal success, so much so that we actually got then an exclusivity agreement with 3 of Europe's largest bakeries.
It's just, so can I pause you there? This is it's the most straightforward kind of both of the businesses that we discussed so far. Is like, so we thought this was a good idea, and then they flew us out to California. I think it went a little bit easier than it is. Then we got this guy came over. He had very delicious stuff. Then everyone in Europe bought our pastries, or, you know, like, it's
yeah, it's mental. It's the way of
time frame from like him saying, here's a piece of strudel, to you guys kind of get it into the supermarket game.
Yeah, so I'll break it down into more micro. Like it's very hard work, right? So like, essentially you have to be a little crazy. Myself and Rob, like, he was baking and I was literally walking up and down Georgia Street with a basket of pastries and grease-proof paper on top, and walking in to a coffee shop and saying, hey, would you like to buy this basket of pastries? Not knowing what the price was, not knowing what the costs were, just fairly keen to sell that basket for whatever I could get and see if there was a market and validate what we had. And thankfully we had a very high sales rate. I mean, 90% of places around that I went into bought, and that was extremely gratifying and exciting. Like, I mean, the first basket of pastries I sold, I think, was for 30 quid, and I'd say we probably made about €2. You know, the basket itself was like 20 quid from Musgraves, you know, and that's excluding labor, you know, it was mad. And then how we scaled up was when you have your validation of your business, which we did, we started to try and outsource it to scale. And we realized that supermarkets would order a lot more than a coffee shop. And so I went to Super Value in Longford, where the manager, Roy Davis, where I'm from, Longford. I sat down and I said, Roy, you know, we're a new business. We're trying to get off the ground. Would you have a taste of these? And he tasted them and he ordered 7 cases. So 7 cases is the equivalent of 4 baskets times 7. So, you know, 28 baskets in one order. And he said, oh, I'll take that every week, you know. So that was one Super Value who multiplied the business. And we, on the way back to Dublin that same day, we stopped in 6 other Super Values and got the exact same order.
Wow.
So like we were bringing something new to the market, that the market had been saturated with plain croissants, baguettes, bread for 20 years with Cuisine de France. You know, it's like the chicken fillet roll was the most innovative thing we could think of, you know. So we were bringing something new to the market. We brought sourdough to the market before everyone else. And, you know, this is the sort of things that helped us to get such a high throughput in sales. And that's the real micro of it. And we used the success of that to attract other large bakeries around Europe to give us an exclusivity agreement. And we said we're the fastest growing bakery brand in the UK and Ireland, you know. So and they wanted to break in just as much as we did. So going micro again, like we grew organically. We didn't have any investments early on. So we asked the second largest bakery in Europe, would they give us this license exclusivity? And the sales director flew over and met me and Rob, and we were only 2 young lads. So I invited my dad to sit in on the meeting. And I said, this is Will.
Yeah, that's the...
Yeah, my dad with the gray hair. And I said, this is Will. He's our sales director. Yeah. And yeah, look, we winged it a bit, but we put him up in the Westbury. We presented a really good case. We went out for a few beers after, and he really liked what we had done so far and gave us 3 years exclusivity. So on top of that, what was the most exciting part was he gave us two pallets for free of the product, you know, to get going. And or was it 5 pallets? It was enough that we could sell those pallets and then reinvest the profit into more pallets, which became containers. And we became then the largest supplier of donuts in the country in 2017.
Wow.
We supplied Apple Greens and Tesco's nationwide, and Super Values from Dingle to Donegal, you know. So it was 3 failed attempts to break into the UK market. But we used the money then to set up 3 coffee shops in Dublin city centre, and Georgia Street and Ainger Street and Kildare Street. So we had you know, we grew quite quickly. I was 24, 25, and I employed 45 people. You know, it's a quick learning curve. Quick learning curve. We used to do things like we were rewriting the book for ourselves. Like we had a site, our big site on Georgia Street, which had a big basement, so we couldn't think of what to use it for. So we put a ping pong table down there, and it was like the Google of coffee shops we were trying to create. And we were saying people would come in with their CVs every day, and we'd say to them, "Look, if you can beat us in ping pong, you got a job." And it was a great way of like getting to know someone actually is over a game of ping pong. And if they played, they showed that they were open and up for a chat. If they couldn't, you know, they were not able for the back and forth of a customer. So
And
yeah, really exciting journey for those few years that I was involved with Krüst, you know.
Which type of bit? So it's kind of like the first one where you're kind of like being the supplier, I guess, of the goods, and then you're being kind of more of the delivery of that in the cafes. Was there either one? Which one would you prefer? Or say if there was someone starting out with the business, would you say, okay, maybe go open a coffee shop rather than be kind of a distributor? What do you think? Which business do you prefer?
Yeah, it's a good question. And essentially, we actually created 3 different businesses in the one business, which was extremely hard and caused eventually a burnout for both Rob and myself. We started in essentially wholesale. So we're baking, manufacturing, and then we decided exclusive distribution rights from the 3 largest bakeries was much easier, because we were essentially calling customers, seeing who's interested in an order, and then fulfilling the orders. And that could be done through phone and email. So we wouldn't have to leave the office. And we were, you know, supplying containers of breads to supermarkets, which, you know, in one email, you could have one email thread, which brings you in 30, 40K. You know, whereas with a coffee shop, you know, we got into a coffee shop more because we thought you know, let's build a brand, let's create this next Starbucks of bakery, the Au Bon Pain of Europe, you know. And you know, when I look back and I hear all the advisors telling me, you know, retail is really, really tough. You know, you go in with the optimistic, you know, naive, sure, to be grand, you know, we'll knock it out of the park. And in fairness, we did early on.
You've been flying for everything else you've ever done, so you're like, this is going to be...
Yeah. Well, we weren't, you know, I've been through some early failures, but in terms of what we had, we were so confident and strong with our product. Like, everybody couldn't imagine, like, everybody who tasted this thing was just like this is delicious. Yeah. So we essentially then got a small, we said we test the market first. We got a small site in Ainger Street, right across from DIT College. And like, literally had 2 seats at the window, and it was tiny. And it's now Dublin Pizza Company, actually, which do the serve out.
Yeah.
And we did these massive crustinator sandwiches and donuts. And like I still had some friends in college, you know, and in DIT. So they'd all come in, and like 5 people in the shop would make it feel jammed. And it was just a really good fun, good buzz. And we went from that. In the same year, we opened our second shop on Georgia Street, which sat 44 people. So we went from 2 seats at the window to 44, which, I mean, you know, talk about like running 2 different businesses. It was mental. And that's where cracks started to happen. You know, we had a big knowledge gap, you know, from going from one business that was doing well to an extremely different business with no experience, not just starting out, but then going straight into probably the most prime real estate in Dublin, you know. And that was just the opportunistic naivety we had. Now, it did work out. We were growing extremely quickly. We then decided to open a catering business, to open to offices. A lot of offices in the area came in and were like, gee, we love your stuff. We'd love to order it every morning and lunchtime. Would you do that? And like, I mean, it's very hard to say no to business when you're young. And it's one of the biggest learnings I'd say on this is like, you need to know your limits, and it's extremely difficult to say no, but it's really important you find out what is viable and what isn't early on, or else you go down a rabbit hole. And for for us, we had essentially 3 different businesses on the run, Luke. So if you ask me which is easier, I would say if I could do it again, I'd prefer to do the wholesale, but it's extremely difficult to get into that game, and we were extremely fortunate to tie in those agreements early on. But retail is a passion business. It's a lifestyle. You know, if you're in it and you love it, it could be the best job of your life. But I believe, I do believe that as an independent coffee shop, you kind of have to be owner operated to survive, or you need to go with mass scale and mass investment to survive.
Okay, interesting. Because hey, Mark, did you ever want to open a restaurant or that type of thing? Is that ever crossed your mind? I never really asked a bit.
No, I think maybe as a passion project, you know, I wouldn't be opening. I think a lot of people have the idea of that kind of Central Park kind of cafe style where people can just go relax, read a book, and you'd have a cool artwork and there'd be loads of books there and stuff. But like, I don't know how much money that would actually generate. So it would be, if I could keep it ticking over and employ a few people, that would be a nice to have. But I've never really thought of it. It just looks like such a stressful, high paced business, restaurants, cafes. And that's what I was going to ask you, Garret. Like, when you were younger, did you have anything that you wanted to, any kind of business, that any sector or anything that you were passionate about, or did you just kind of want to be an entrepreneur and sell, like myself when I was younger, just sell anything that kind of came your way and you thought you could make a few quid on, or scale it up a little bit? You know, or did you kind of fall into these things? It sounded like you kind of fell into these things and just applied your kind of passion and kind of do it attitude to it.
Yeah, it's a good question, and as you say that, I'm just trying to find some of these little mementos that I keep. But essentially, a few different things happened to me early on. Like, I suppose my granddad was a famous politician in America. This is actually him. So he was best pals with John F. Kennedy.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I kind of it's really interesting that, like, I grew up listening to stories of him being this great man, and like, my mom was, you know, has videos playing in the Oval Office and things like that as a kid with John Jr. and like this amazing, like, family history. And then my parents set up a fruit juice business, which unfortunately ended when they got divorced when I was very young. But I remember when I remember being a kid playing on the pallets, you know, taking out the fruit juice, and, like, you know, them getting in trouble for my misbehavior, you know. But I remember all that sort of stuff growing up, and my family hit a bit of a rough patch then after that. And, like, I never had much money, and I just remember thinking I could make money, you know, and that really gave me an urge to make money. But to answer your question in terms of what would I like to do, initially I really wanted to get into renewable energy. And, like, I think renewable energy is so crucial for our world. And, like, it just was really tough because no one wanted to spend money at the recession, during the recession. And we tried everything from solar to wind to LED. And back then, I mean, you couldn't even sell to people 80% savings. Like, people were just so scared of, you know, it's easy to forget how crazy it was back then, you know. But so
much on the podcast as well, especially people around maybe our age as well, who maybe just left college just at that time, where everything was just on hold for, like. And then I was saying this because I actually left at that stage. I went to Canada for a few years. And I remember telling, because when I left Ireland, things were, like, going really well in Vancouver, and, like, they had kind of gotten over it. And they were like, I was telling them, like, back home, everything's still on hold. There's still, you know, these Europeans coming in trying to sort out the finances, and everyone's just kind of waiting for things to get going again.
Same in Australia.
Yeah, it's easy.
But then again, that's when you can actually really kind of pursue an opportunity and make the most of it, you know, when the chips are down.
Exactly. Like that.
well.
You know, Georgian Street is high retail now, but when we were looking for spaces, I mean, there was 12 empty lots, you know, on Georgian Street. So like we were able to go in as young guys and impress the landlord and get a shot, you know, whereas like why I left Krüst, and one of the main reasons was every guy with his cat was setting up a coffee shop, you know, and like they were paying mad money to fit out a coffee shop. Like I met someone who spent 250 grand on a coffee shop fit out, like, and I'm like, you know,
how many cups do you have to sell?
It doesn't make any sense. And like, as nice as the coffee shop looks and amazing it looks, and people come in and say, wow, like, I mean, it just didn't make financial sense to me. And like, you're competing against grossly disproportionate investment. And like, that's why I just decided, like, you know, it's the market's getting too heated in that sector, personally.
Here's a quick question for you, Garret. Why is there no obvious, well, no, maybe there is a few, but why isn't there as many drive-through coffee shops in Ireland? Did you ever think of that? Like, because in America and in Canada, they're everywhere and they seem to be making an absolute fortune.
Yeah, I suppose it comes down to convenience. Like, so in America, a lot of places are perfectly convenient through on your way to work. So you can literally pull off the side of the road and pull in and get this coffee. We actually don't have a lot of vacant space. If you look around Dublin for these sort of food stalls or food trucks or coffee vans, you know, like to pull in off the road and do that, it's all quite condensed. So like, if you think about driving around the city centre, where could you pull off? I mean, it's hard enough to find parking, you know.
Well, I was thinking of the N11, really. Anywhere there's a petrol station.
Yeah. Petrol stations are good, and that's why they sell it inside. But
even now, like at the time when I first thought of it 10 years ago, and it still hasn't happened since, when I was in Canada, and the drive-through nature of it, I would imagine that's only a good thing for people now, not having to have any contact with people, having to go into the shop. I'd be surprised. Maybe somebody is in the middle of you know, planning it. But anyway, I just thought I'd ask you because you know coffee.
Yeah, you got to think about it as well from the station owner's perspective. Like we pitched to potentially put Krüst coffee machines in all the petrol stations. You got to think from their point of view as well. They make nearly more money now. Like, look at Apple Greens, right? They make more money from getting you inside and spending than they do from the fuel, you know. So essentially their business model derives off you going in, and that's the same for every petrol station. Like, the fuel is getting so competitive that they would need to make more money out of you from getting inside. So you go inside and the coffee machine is big business. Like, you know, that's why now in some petrol stations you go in and the coffee machine like scans your face and gets you a coffee. You know, it's bloody class. Like they're like these huge wall units with the bells and whistles, because, you know, it's big business for them. And I suppose if they're making the money that way, why would they put a coffee truck outside, you know?
There's my answer then. Maybe that's why.
Like that for a long time. I worked in Texaco back in the day when I was about 18. I did a terrible job. I was there only in body. You know, I didn't really give a lot, you know. But it was an interesting model as well, because it was the same back then. They didn't like they did make a few pennies here and there on the fuel. They were more worried about people driving off for the fuel. That was the most important thing. But they did make money on like scratch cards and car washes. That's kind of what the game was. So getting people in, getting them gambling, getting them washing was the key. But I like I like where Mark's head's at with that, because it maybe not for petrol stations, but also for other things. Like in Canada, there's drive-through off licenses. I don't know how maybe that's not a good idea, but the drive-through insurance places, you drive through you get your insurance set up and then you drive.
Yeah, drive-through. Anything convenient really is a good win. Like, I think, like I always thought as well, like the car wash. You know, they have this big red automatic car wash in Texas. And like I saw it, and it's basically a container, which you buy the container and it folds out, and it's an automatic machine car wash, and as many cars go through the bloody thing, you know, and you just pay at the front and you go through. And just thought, like, what, you know, why do you have to, in some petrol stations, have a guy who literally does one car and you're waiting 20 minutes? You know, you could have 3-4 containers.
Yeah.
Like, away you go, you know, it's pay per play. So there's lots of innovation out there. It's just people actually haven't heard of it, don't know about it, or it just hasn't fit the market model at this moment in time. You know, like, a lot of petrol stations right now are gearing up to do electric vehicle stuff. So hopefully there's some entrepreneurs out there in renewable that are still with, you know, are thinking about, how do I connect in with electric vehicle on that new network, you know? So
that's something really interesting. I just had a thought there. Say if you guys are like so you're not making any money on the petrol or the diesel or whatever. Now, you're probably not going to make that much money on charging people's cars, but they do have to sit there for a half an hour. They're going to go in and buy all types of stuff. It's a better deal for them, perhaps, because it's like a captive audience, you know?
What are you going to do for that 20-30 minutes?
Put a little bookies in the corner. I don't know. Get creative, you know? I don't know if that's going to be good.
Hopefully less bookies.
But so after that, you mentioned that there was some burnout. Maybe you wanted to move on, do something else. You went from there into a software business, or a platform business. What was that transition like? Where did that kind of come from?
Yeah, so I suppose very early on, and this I think will resonate with a lot of I call traditional business owners. So I think there's two different types of entrepreneur business right now in the world. There's traditional, which is, you know, the coffee shop, the restaurant, the hotel, etc. And the insurance, the legals, all of this is traditional. And, you know, they're very proven business models. And like, if you do well, you know, there's thousands of stories that you can look at that give you advice and guidance on what they did right and what they did wrong. And then there's technology, which is a new type of business. It's a new landscape. Like, in 10 years, can you imagine what we've done since the first iPhone? You know, it's insane. And every year it's rewritten as to what's the new best practice, new scalable technology, new trend, etc. So I got very frustrated that I felt, as you know, as a young achiever, I felt like I'm hiring all these people, I'm in the center of town, I'm going after big ambition. Why is the government giving away €500,000 to this company that's pre-revenue, you know, has no idea, no experience in business before, nothing? And €500,000, you know, like, I was really angry at that. And I was in the middle of writing a blog, my first ever blog, about how if they gave 100 traditional businesses €5,000, that they would create way more employment than if they gave one startup technology company €500,000. That 5,000 would buy a new coffee machine, or a new printer setup or something. And like, it's really worth thinking about how traditional businesses are key employers, you know, like all those jobs. And the government doesn't really look after entrepreneurs in this country. Like, you know, when we were starting out, you know, there was no social security, really. You know, it's like, you go on this wild journey, no one tells you how many pitfalls there are, and then if you do make it, they'll tax you like crazy. You know, it's kind of makes no sense to even want to try. But I just got very annoyed that I had to pay rates. I had to pay for, you know, Dublin business development, whatever, and I wasn't getting any benefit. I had to pay for then the health and safety inspector was coming in and making us change things every 6 months. Then they always have to find something, you know, that's their job.
Yeah.
Building regulations was brought in. It was a brand new regulation body, and they came in and it cost us 30 grand to fix the stairs, you know, like 30 centimeters too short. Like, it was literally madness. And for me, it was just, when I was looking at technology, I said, there's none of this regulation. It's not tight. It's, you know, it's open, free, for ripe for innovation and create new opportunities. And I just thought that instead of giving out and complaining, which I never do, you know, like halfway through the blog, I was like, this isn't me. Like, I just don't like complaining. I said, you know, if that saying just hit me, it was like, if you can't beat them, join them. You know, it was like a technology landscape. So I was in a stage actually where I was fairly burnt out. Like, when you work 20-hour days, 7 days a week, you have the energy to do that in your early 20s. And like, I just wasn't enjoying it. Like, you know, my friends will tell you, you know, back then I was just working all the time, and like, you know, you'd think you'd enjoy it a lot more, but in hospitality, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. Like, you know, there's a great movie called The Founder. It was about the McDonald's, Ray Kroc, and the whole story behind that. And it sums it up perfectly. It's like, you know, his opening day, no one shows up, you know, like all the build up for opening day, no one shows up. Then they go, right, we'll throw a party. Everyone will show up. Everyone shows up for the party, and then they get invaded by wasps because they smell the sweet, you know, smell in the air. And the wasps come and flooding and everything. That happens when you own like a hospitality industry, like a hospitality business. And like, I remember sitting in for an interview and the roof starts leaking on the interviewer's head. You know, it's like random stuff that really stresses you out. And anyway, hit burnout at a very early age and realized, like, you know, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing here. And like, my co-founder had just up and left abruptly. So I had literally everything on my plate. So hit that burnout stage and took a little bit of time off. And anyone who hits that stage will know it takes a mental toll. You really have to step back from the business. And, you know, thankfully I was able to do so. And for 3 or 4 weeks. And in that time, I reflected and found that, you know, I really enjoy innovation, and found that in 20 years, if I was doing this, would I be happy? And I said no was the answer. So I started to look at other things, and I got an idea one day. I bought a car purely because my girlfriend at the time, now fiance, she was sick of getting the bus in from Rafarnham. And so I bought a car, and the first day with the car, I couldn't find parking. We were driving through Ranelagh, and like, it was just mayhem. 20 minutes of up and down past Smith's Bar there. And then I started to see all this open space in front of people's driveways. And I just said, you know what? I used to work in electricity while I was getting Krüst up and running. When we had no money, I was doing electricity in the evenings, knocking on people's doors, asking would they like to change their electricity supplier. And I just thought, look, I'll go and knock on her door, on this person's door, and see if they'll let me park. And so I did. I knocked on the door, and this kind lady opened, and I just said, listen, I'm really stressed out and can't find this space anywhere. Is there any chance I could just leave it here for a few hours? And she said, no problem, which I was really surprised at. And I came back a few hours later with some chocolates and €10 and just said, thanks so much. And she was delighted. Like, she was like, oh, geez, I should do this all the time. And we had a good laugh. And then I got back in the car and said, you know what? I Airbnb the house. Like, why can't people Airbnb or rent out their parking? And that's where Parkpnp and the idea came from. And so I had that initial idea. for a technology company.
Such a huge problem. Like I was driving around Dunleary. I used to live in Dunleary. I live in Greystones now.
Yeah.
We were driving around and around looking for like any type of park down the seafront, anywhere. And it was just snail's pace going around. I think it took us about 40 minutes. And I was just like, this is the worst experience I think I've had in the last month. Do you know what I mean?
It's so stressful.
So
It's very brutal.
And then you're trying to back into a spot, and then people are trying to get around you. I'm like, anyway.
And if you're a bad parker like me as well, you look at the spot about 6 times before,
Yeah. I'll tell you, I gotta take a swing at that if I'm gonna make it. It's not one of my fortes. And then usually when I get out, I'm about a mile away from the curve.
Yeah.
But so okay, this is great, right? We've got this problem. You're solving your own itch, as they say. You right now you've been an entrepreneur for a few years, so you've got all of those type of chops. But from a technology point of view, how do you even go about figuring out like a platform, or is that something that's kind of outsourced? Do you need a technical co-founder? What would be the best route to get that going?
Yeah, so I suppose the benefit of having been in business a couple of years, I wasn't 100% sure on the business idea, and I had other ideas before, like I was mulling in my head this other idea called Flight Cred, and it was basically like a prepay trip. So I was mulling over the two ideas. The prepaid, it was like how many times your friends and you would say, let's go to Ibiza next year or something like that, and like you can't afford it right now, but you'd like to book in the cheap rate now. So it's basically like you can book in the cheap rate and then pay it down over time until the thing. So I thought that was a genius idea. I was going to do it, and then this came up, so I had to research the market, and I spent about a month researching the market, and I found that there was some companies now doing very similar to Parkpnp in America, and were growing quite quickly, and the market just looked so ripe for disruption. Like, I mean, you had the old players, parking operators who hadn't changed in 40 years. You had this wave of technology and people using their mobile phones to make payments. There was so many good positive signs to make this happen. And it's also what it came down to was are you solving a daily problem? And with Flight Cred, this isn't a daily problem. With Parkpnp, it's a daily problem. Parking is a pain in the ass for a lot of people on a daily basis. And so that's what made me decide Parkpnp over Flight Cred. And I think that's in the research phase, you realize you need a technical co-founder, and that was my next step, was to go about finding a technical co-founder. And the step after that was to go about actually validating what an MVP would look like, and would people actually put their spaces onto the platform, which we did. So I'm trying to keep it micro, because I know you want to keep it micro for listeners out there. How I did it was I got lucky. I got lucky in that I was delivering pastries to a Bank of Ireland catering event, and Bank of Ireland were big sponsors of us. Thanks, Bank of Ireland. They put me on every bank in the country with the Krüst logo. So huge shout out to them. They bought catering office, and I arrived with the pastries, and I saw these guys on stage pitching their tech business, and I watched it, and I just thought, their product, their app and website looked really slick, but I thought their business model wasn't great, and I thought that they were all developers. So I figured, that makes sense. They need a commercial mind behind it. So I asked them, would they come in and sit down in Krüst and have a coffee and a donut and chat about it and this new idea. So it presented the idea of Parkpnp to them and said, look, guys, only going to take a month of your time. If you build this MVP, I'll go out and knock on 300 doors and get 300 parking spaces for our MVP. So that validates the business side on the supply. And then you have the minimum viable product on the app and website. So it's not going to take you more than a month of your time. In exchange, I'll give you some equity once we start the business because I can't pay you. And because I did go out to the market asking agencies if they'd build this for me, and they, got quoted some insane figures. Like one guy quoted me like £500,000. It's mental. So
did you look further afield, Garret, outside Ireland?
Yeah. Briefly. I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to look for too long. Like I got lucky in this scenario, but I would recommend to look, and more likely I'd recommend to go to events and meet people. I think a technical co-founder is someone you have to gel with and sees the sort of way you do. In a way, it's kind of hard to understand this, but different programmers and developers are different in the way that they operate. And like a good CTO doesn't just build it, but also can sort of see the product with you. And that's, I'm very fortunate. Daniel Paul is my co-founder. He's a tech genius. He's probably the brightest young mind in the country when it comes to this sort of stuff. And he's brilliant, and I'm very fortunate to have him as my partner.
So would you recommend that a technical co-founder is probably the most realistic way to do it for a startup, as opposed to outsourcing it to somebody and having to spend that money, because it's a lot of money?
Yeah, I think to be honest, not everyone is as luxurious, as lucky and has the luxury of having a technical co-founder. I totally understand the supply and demand of that side of things, and not everyone can find a good technical co-founder is the honest answer. And it's really supply and demand. I would say that there are more and more of these guys and girls outside of Ireland, and technology the way it is, I would recommend Zoom calls with people in Central Eastern Europe, India, Pakistan. There's lots of Thailand. There's lots of remote working happening, and because of that, you can pay less as well. So you can find people outside of the country that don't have the cost of living as we do.
At the end of the day, if they're co-founders, they have to have the same mindset. Lots of other things that it has to be aligned.
More about mindset and skill than it is about location these days.
Yeah.
Forget about the boundary we set ourselves now. I have to come meet you and see it. That doesn't happen. That's not the future, lads.
Yeah. But I think that you'd be hard pressed to find. So I think there's a yin and the yang here to the relationship there, where the technical guys, not that they're opposed to this, but knocking on 300 doors is not where a lot of their skills lie. So if you can get anyone who can get the business in is worth being a partnership with, so that's really interesting.
There's so many examples of famous kind of, one's a big thinker, and then a duo. One's a big thinker, entrepreneur, risk taker, and then the other is the tech guy.
Yeah. It's like a real proper partnership, and the fact is that you both balance each other out. It's like I tried Code Academy, just to get a basic understanding, and it's a different type of learning, and some people have it and some people don't, and it's about understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. I'm not a technical person when it comes to programming. I'd rather leave it to the experts, and it's, but I'm good at presenting what my idea is. So it's about learning what's the most efficient way of presenting your idea, so that's easily consumable for this person as well, and vice versa. And the better you get at that, the better it is on both sides, and better it is for scaling up your business. If you're not presenting the idea well enough, how can they be expected to build it as you see it in your head,
And so with the Parkpnp, after the MVP kind of thing is built, is it kind of enough that it can be kind of functional when you go around and get the 300 people and stuff like that? Or is there another whole, is there a way to forward after that?
Yeah, I was very clear from day one in that I wasn't going to leave a multi-million euro business to start another organic business. I was very straight in that, if we were setting this up, we were going to scale it and raise money and go that route and find investors. So when we got the MVP set up, I went out pitching investors, and we were pre-revenue, and we raised €500,000 pre-revenue. And this was, 4 years ago. And we raised the €500,000 with the help of Enterprise Ireland, who matched half as well. And we built the product, built out the team, and started to go out and list parking spaces all across the country. So down to Cork was our second city launched. And now we have 24,000 spaces in Ireland up for rent. We work with Eurocar Parks and Q Park and Parkrite and all of those guys to put their spaces up. The convention centre, for example. And then what happened was we were scaling into Belgium and the Netherlands and live in those two cities. And an interesting thing happened. We were trying to raise a Series A investment of about 5 million, and instead we raised 1 million, and we decided to look at another solution that we were running with called ParkOffice. So essentially a large company, a pharmaceutical company, had asked us, could we find them 50 parking spaces in the Parkpnp marketplace? And so we went out and we found 50 parking spaces in the area for them. And when we went in, it was actually me who was going in to sign the contracts with them. And I remember it was 50 spaces, and it was something like 65 or 70 grand a year, I think it was. It was a big contract for us at the time. And we were going in, and I drove into the car park, and lads, their car park was empty. It was dead. It was so empty that I drove in, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would they want to spend all this money and have an empty car park underneath them? So most people would hold their, bite their tongue and not say anything. But I just couldn't help it. I was too curious. I went up and I said, look, guys, you're spending all this money, but I have to ask, and I know I'm probably shooting myself here. Why do you have why are you paying me this money if you have all this space in your car park? And they said it's because that space is for senior management, but they're out on meetings, out sick, or on holidays, and the space is left empty. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, it's really hard to organize who gets the space if they have left it and things like that. And I was just like, that makes no sense. And they were like, do you have a solution for it? And I said, I might. And so we went back to the drawing board and we created ParkOffice. And ParkOffice has, in the last 18 months, scaled very quickly. We just hit our milestone there of 10 Fortune 500s. and we're working with some of the biggest names globally. So essentially what we do is hot desking for parking spaces, and we manage the parking spaces and maximize the use of the parking. And we've actually, since COVID, nearly doubled the amount of demonstration calls we've been doing, because people are scared of public transport. And
that might be, I didn't see the angle with the public transport, but of course, everyone.
And also the rotation of space. So a lot of people are working from home for 2-3 days a week now, and other people then who are working 2 to 3 days want to come into the office when they're not working, who didn't have a space before. So who manages all that rotation? And that's us. So like we've had this sort of weird balance of, like, Parkpnp, obviously with lockdowns, unfortunately gets hit pretty hard, but ParkOffice has continued to grow steadily from February, and like now we're in an incredibly fortunate position where we're talking to some of the biggest names in the world, and I can't even say the names under NDA, but you've used them, and you used them a lot during lockdown. So that's the position we're in.
And is from a user perspective, Garret, is that an app similar to Parkpnp, that the staff use?
Yeah. So we started off as like having 1 or 2 solutions, but now we're sort of a matrix of solutions. We have like lots of different smart solutions for different situations. So I'll give you one situation. We have a company in LA, and they've 4,500 employees coming in every day, and they have 2 parking lots. Okay. And one parking lot is right beside the headquarters, and one is 5 minutes down the road. So which do you think everyone goes to in the morning?
Yeah, first one.
Right, first one. So what happens in the morning, everybody, all 3 of us are driving in. We go to the first one. We drive up all the different levels. We can't find a space. And then we're chaos all the way back down. And then we're out into traffic again. And we're driving down, and we're into the second one. That extra time could be 10 minutes every day to your morning routine, right? And like, you're talking 1,000 people a day have this 10 minutes problem. These are some of the most well-paid executives in the world, have this 10-minute gap every single day, or, it's an affliction, right? So a huge cost burden. So one of our simple solutions is essentially we track the occupancy, so that on your app, you get notified when the car park is 90% full, and it'll say, hey, Mark, you're probably better off from where you are right now to go to car park B, and you're much more likely to get a space. And then we also encourage you to take public transport and things like that, and challenges, and reducing the need for space as well. So it's not just the parking element that we do now as well. So that's one smart solution out of the matrix, but it's essentially making parking bringing a smart culture of parking to your business, when before what you had was zero, effectively. And parking is the beginning and end of every journey. One of the reasons I loved it since the start is because it's really unsexy. It's like when they say like you make more money in the dirty businesses, like, who the hell thinks of parking? It's like nobody wants to think about it, but yet everybody does it on a daily basis. And it's one of those things that is in mobility, and smart mobility is the future. And it's prime real estate as well. There's just as much parking space in America as there is office space. So that's a huge amount of real estate that's just lying there.
It's such an interesting one, because it's like I said, it's a real pain, but people, like I said, it's not really thinking about that. I remember me and Mark have always said that it would be great if we just had some, those parking complexes and then just kind of retire. But I talk about just lack of choice, whatever. I was in town and I think like, my wife was pregnant, so we couldn't really get the stuff in. So I think we ended up paying something like €23 for parking. Broke my heart when I got to the thing, but there was I didn't use any apps or anything. There was just literally just drive up. This is the closest one. Okay, I'll go in here. Going in blind. There's so much improvement that could be done there, and it seems like you guys are really cornering the market there. One more comment on your unsexy businesses. One of my favorite businesses is here in Wicklow, and I told Mark about it before. It's like you bring all of you. It's a big place. It's down near the Beehive. I always forget the name of it, but you bring all of your wood that you've cut down, or all the kind of tree chippings, anything like that, any of the kind of garden waste, they take it off you for free, put it through a mulcher, and then sell it on the other end.
They're called mulch.
It might be called
mulch. Yeah, I've seen that. Clever.
I'm just standing on the side of the road watching this, where there's like their inputs are free, and it's literally turning on a machine, and it's been there for years. Like, and it's one of those things where like no one's out there leaving college or pitching a mulch company. But genius.
Money does grow on trees.
The lads in collect.ie as well. Big shout out to them. We were competitors in the Spark of Genius Award. But they have they've just brought trash collection online and literally and skip rental and stuff like that, and huge business, especially now during COVID, skips and all that sort of everyone's home repair. All these businesses that people rarely think about mean there's less competition, most likely higher margin, and potentially a huge market. And look at taxis. Were taxis sexy before Uber came along? No. I laugh with some investors because, this is just the beginning of this smart mobility stage as well. There's so many good opportunities here when it comes to parking, where you can turn it into a benefit. For example, subscription parking. You ever thought about paying a set fee and you get free access to spaces all around the city? You ever thought about where you can advertise? So YouTube, you can watch an advertisement or a 5-minute advertisement on your phone in exchange for free parking for an hour. All these different things that are the future that people just have to open their minds to. And, we're well positioned to kind of have a good stab at that. But yeah, Parkpnp and ParkOffice. ParkOffice is scaling now quite well, and where it's kind of more of a focus because it's the sort of the economics towards the business model are kind of lending itself. It's a SaaS company, so it's much higher margin, and essentially we charge per space per month, and it's an early market. So we're kind of aiming and running fast at that sort of market leader globally, and we feel in the next 2 years we'll be the dominant player in the market globally. And sort of like the sales force for management of parking, and then in 5 to 10 years will be the sales force of smart mobility globally, which is kind of an exciting goal.
Endless possibilities there. It's so crazy. Such a interesting journey from going door to door with pastries to taking on the corporate giants of the US and their parking needs. Yeah. Usually at this stage, we're actually over an hour already. Time fucking flies sometimes. So usually at this stage, we jump into a lightning round of questions for the entrepreneurs that we have a chat with. I think today we might do a curtailed version just because I want to be respectful of Garrett's time here. So Mark, what was what are the 3 burning questions you've got there for Garret? And they don't have to be quick answers, but to be rapid fire.
Okay. Definitely, what's the best business idea you've never acted upon?
Oh,
the best one now.
Flight. Oh, well, best one actually was, do you know Urban Volt? Have you ever heard of Urban Volt?
Yes.
So essentially the guys in Urban Bolt created this energy performance contract, which essentially means that they'll put the LED lighting into your business and then get paid back through the savings. And myself and Devan actually thought of that idea, put together a contract and pitched it to one business, but we never followed through on it. And I just see the lads nailing it and wish we had maybe followed through on it. But yeah, look, everything happens for a reason, and the lads are doing extremely well.
Great.
How much money is enough money?
It's not about money, lads, to be honest. Money is all about getting you to one place of sustainability. As an entrepreneur, you know, obviously there's risks everywhere and everybody wants to tear you down, you know, from your parents sometimes to the government. You know, everybody wants to take you down, unfortunately. And it's a small support group, getting bigger, thankfully. But it's a tough role. And, but if you do it just for money, I think you won't go too far. You have to enjoy what you're doing, and you have to have passion to go through the tough times. And money is a short-term motivator for me anyway, and for a lot of people I know in this space. And if you want to be really big, I don't think money alone is the motivator.
Love that answer. It's great.
Okay, two more quick ones. If you could do business anywhere in the world, and you probably are, where would it be? So where's your favorite market?
Great question. We do have clients from New Zealand to LA. So like, just in terms of, oh man, that's a tough one, because I've been in San Francisco. You know, I absolutely love the optimism and the energy and the buzz, the ideas. But then it's so expensive to make a move there. You know, it's like rent is astronomical. It's like 2-3 times Dublin. You know, it's mental. It's also much tougher to you know, you have to raise a lot more money to get things off the ground, and it's much tougher than setting up here. And then you go the other way, and I think, you know, the market is kind of really nice in Ireland, in that we're kind of we're not as heavily regulated as other European countries like Belgium and France, you know, which have a lot of taxes and company taxes and charges and different things. Ireland's a very good market to start, but it's a really difficult market to scale, especially as a consumer business. That's why I'm so impressed by Devan, you know, with Buy Me. I think it's an incredible, like, very rare that a consumer business does well in Ireland. And a lot of great entrepreneurs have tried. But B2B, it's a great starter market, because we have access to the biggest companies in the world right here in Ireland. And then they link us out into the mothership, you know. And that's been very good for us. And yeah, so I would say, if you're starting a B2B, start in Ireland, or somewhere similar. If you're starting a B2C, you know, I would never start in a small country, B2C, because unless you're just doing a very quick beta and then you're moving out, it's just such a tough market to scale in.
Okay, last one. If you could advise someone to learn one skill, what would it be?
One skill. There's so many. One skill. Read more. It's not even a skill. It's just read more. Read as much as you bloody can, and upscale on everything you read. You know, it's like, read about people who've done it before you, and take their learnings. Like, I could easily just say programming or whatever, but lots of people won't get that. You know, I could easily say accounting, basic accounting. A lot of people are really bad with numbers, so I'd say, you know, it's hard to pick one specific skill, because there's lots that would help. So I would say read as much as you can, and pick up the nuggets from that. If that
any book you'd recommend for an entrepreneur?
The 5 a.m. Club. I always keep it within fairly close distance.
Wow, that was close. That was right there.
Charming. Yeah, I consistently read a chapter over coffee pretty much every morning or two, and
wow,
it's just mindset stuff. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. He talks about it's all about getting your mindset right as an entrepreneur, which I think is half the battle you're up against yourself mostly. And if your mindset's not right, it slows you down or stops you. So
amazing.
I must read that.
Look into that. One more question: would you like a T-shirt or would you prefer a mug? What do you think?
Mug, lads. Unless stock's low, and then T-shirt.
Well, definitely send out a mug. So, Garret Flower, thank you so much for joining us today. An incredible story, and what's really nice about this one is because it just seems like it's right in the middle. Sometimes we've got people that have just started their business. Some people have kind of sold their business, and it's kind of looking back. But we love to talk to people that are actually in the trenches and doing so well. So thanks very much for spending so much time with us this evening.
And I just say, I just recently launched a YouTube channel, Garret Flower. So I'd appreciate it, just a push on that, because it's something new I'm doing.
Yeah, it's excellent. I checked it out. I'd recommend everybody go visit it.
As well.
Appreciate that.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon.
All
Thanks,
right.
Garret. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.